Well, this should be an interesting Q&A. My name's Quincy. Take your questions from YouTube, Twitter, all of the above, where we talk about the Browns. A lot of questions this week, a lot of interesting questions. A lot of people kind of asking the same question. So we're going to get into all of it. We're going to start with a question here. The name was a name that I didn't want to put on here because like some people would get confused if it was actually that person, but it's not that person. So I just left the name off. But this question says, realistic trade scenario for Kirk Cousins or other quarterbacks. Should we go after a QB in the draft? Malik Willis could be sat behind Kirk Cousins for a few years. I don't know how much I'm willing to give up to go get and pay for Kirk Cousins. Like, that's the one thing about Kirk Cousins is that his contract is something you have to eat. And if that's the case, and if I have to eat that contract, that significantly lowers the compensation. Like, for me, I think most I'm willing to give up is maybe a third and a fifth for Kirk Cousins if I have to eat up that contract. And that's if I really, really want to do it. I don't think there's a world where you would give up a second round pick for Kirk Cousins. I understand the numbers are good with Kirk Cousins, but we kind of know what the book is on Kirk Cousins, right? He is somebody who could be a transitional guy. And for transition quarterbacks, I think Alex Smith is probably like the high end, and you paid like a second round pick for Alex Smith. And I think, anywhere from second to fifth is probably reasonable. But for Kirk Cousins, I would say 3 and a 5. I don't think that gets him. I don't know if that gets him. I don't know what the market's going to be like, but that's what I would be willing to give. The next question comes from Lurch, who says, what's up, Q? Which position do you think changes the most in the offseason? I think we're going to see an overhaul to all the pass catchers. I hope they do bring David Njoku back. I think I would like to see him back in a expanded role in this offense. I think probably Austin Hooper's out. I don't know what they're going to do with Harrison Bryant, if they're going to extend him or not. Well, not extend him, but extend his role or not. But I would also like to see them go after another tight end in the draft or free agency. Like, I think we need better tight end play, more dynamic tight end play than what we've been getting. I think David Njoku is certainly part of the answer for that, but I don't know if he's the answer, right? Like, the question for me is I think the Browns need a receiving threat, either wide or tight end, that can be a guy who can carry the offense a little bit, right? I think we have guys who can carry it, obviously, in the run game, multiple guys who can carry it in the run game, but we need somebody who can carry this offense in the passing game. It's going to be hard to find a quarterback who can do that in the free agency market or in the trade market. It's going to be very expensive. So where else can you go? You can look at wide receivers and see if you can find one who can carry the passing game, or tight ends who can, right? Like a George Kittle, you know what I mean? So it's ultimately up to the Browns how they go about it. But I think pass catchers in whole, like not just wide receiver, but tight end, that's going to see an overhaul. Next question comes from Paul Hines, who says, other than wide receiver, what position do you think we look for in the draft? If we cut Baker, do you think we draft a new talent or look for a trade? The energy I'm getting from people who have been in this draft community for a while, that are looking at the tape and been looking at the tape all year, and from how other teams are moving, is that there's no legitimate belief that there is a solid bet in this draft for somebody to become a franchise quarterback. That does not mean that there's not somebody who could give you solid quarterback play in this draft, but I do think it is true that there's no real great bet, right? Like, people were willing to take chances and bet on a Trevor Lawrence or a Trey Lance because certain traits were there. This year, there's nobody from a prospect standpoint of that caliber. You look at the top guys here, it's Kenny Pickett, who is like a 6-year senior. He's had one good year really at Pitt. Everything else is pretty unexceptional with him, and he doesn't have any exceptional traits physically. Malik Willis has some physical traits that are exceptional. He's very twitchy. He's very fast. He's quick, but he also has some unexceptional things about his game. And if you just look at how he has played versus Power 5 competition throughout his career, or even when he was at Auburn, it's not very encouraging at all. So that's something that concerns me. And you look at Carson Strong, and I think Carson Strong is a pocket passer. I think he has slow feet. And I just don't think in today's NFL that's somebody that you risk a lot to go for, right? Like, I would be more willing to risk for somebody who's mobile. I would be more willing to risk with somebody with a big skill set. I wouldn't be willing to risk for somebody who, you're betting to carry pocket pass in the NFL, but, they have slower feet. I just don't love any of the prospects here enough to take with a first round pick. Somebody's going to be taken in the first round, but I just don't feel like a lot of people are confident that there is a guy who's worth putting that flag on and really getting behind in that way. So I don't know if that's the position that they're going to go after. I think they're going to look at what they can do on this offense to create a situation to where the passing game can be carried by somebody who is not the quarterback, right? I think we're going to look at some wide receivers. I think we're going to look at some tight ends. We're going to try to find ways to carry whoever the quarterback is, because, yes, it would be nice to get Russ. It would be really nice to get Aaron Rodgers, but those are options that are going to be tough, right? Like, it's not a guarantee. I think the Russ thing's a little bit more possible than people give it credit for, but neither are this like inevitable thing that's going to happen for the Browns. So in the case of that, and in the case of if you have to throw out a Marcus Mariota, if you have to throw out a Kirk Cousins, if you have to throw out a Derek Carr or some kind of starting level quarterback who's not necessarily a carry level quarterback, then you got to have pieces in place to be able to carry them. And I think that's probably what they're going to try to do here. The next question comes from Gold Great, who says, does Baker denying Mary Kay Cabot's claims change your opinion on whether he should still be here next year? Honestly, it pushes me further in the direction that he shouldn't come back, to be honest with you. Look, I'm not here to debate what people feel about Mary Kay Cabot. That is a rabbit hole in itself. I know people feel very strongly about her, and it's mostly in a negative opinion. But my opinion of her as a reporter is that she has been credible for the bulk of her career, and she doesn't put things in her stories that are outright lies. Now, she does stretch the truth sometimes. She does kind of manipulate some things, but it's never a outright lie. Like, if she's telling you she's hearing something, I feel like most of the time it's coming from somewhere. And when we're talking about Baker in this whole Mary Kay situation and him denying the claims that Mary Kay made, like, honestly, I feel insulted that Baker is trying to act like she's making all of this up, not because of some kind of media integrity standpoint, but because he is aware that he has said some of this stuff publicly that would lead people to this conclusion, right? He has disagreed at his press conference that you can go back on YouTube and watch yourself on the Cleveland Browns channel, right? Like, if you don't believe me, he has questioned the offense multiple times. He questioned the offense after the Lions game, did not even show up to the press conference, which was okay, whatever. But then the next day came back after cooling off and still questioned the offense after that. And whether you agree with him, whether the offense should be questioned or not, that's not really important in this conversation. What's important in this conversation is that Baker Mayfield has been snipping about this offense since October. And when it comes out that, hey, Baker's not getting along with Kevin Stefanski, he has issues with the offense, when somebody writes that after you have been doing and putting this out there publicly, you're going to call them clickbait and like attack their whole credibility. I just find ridiculous, to be honest with you. Like, it just seems very immature. And I thought Baker honestly was done with this stuff, this brand of drama. In 2019, right? He embarrassed himself in 2019 with all of the trolling that he was doing and all the mentions that he was getting involved with. And we all kind of agreed after 2019, he got to stop doing this, right? So 2020, he does a good job. Stop doing that. Coincides with him playing well. But right when he gets backed up into that same corner, he goes right back to the same garbage he was doing in 2019 that we asked him to stop. And at this point, I just can't ride with it anymore. It doesn't seem like anybody is interested in defending Baker Mayfield that is on the team currently, right? That's something that is interesting, right? Because when stuff came out about Odell freelancing and how he's hurting the team, 8 guys almost came out publicly on Twitter to defend Odell Beckham, even though Odell was released from the team at that point, right? They came out and defended him. Myles Garrett in his press conference defended Odell Beckham in that situation publicly. Has Myles Garrett said anything in defense of Baker Mayfield and how he's carrying himself or how the media is portraying him? No. Like, has anybody come out and supported Baker Mayfield publicly in this whole battle that he's having with the local media that's on the team? Because they felt like that was a lie, right? I feel like more people would be like, hey, man, why are you lying on Baker, right? If they were behind him. You can't be mad at somebody when you put out there 4 + 4, and then that person writes the answer to that is 8, right? The math, the writing is on the wall with Baker Mayfield. He has put this out there himself. And I know people act like, when people highlight this stuff about Baker, that we're trying to run him out of town. I don't want Baker to be off this team for this reason. I really don't, but he is making this happen himself. He did not have to do any of this. He did not have to publicly throw his coaches under the bus during the year. He really didn't. And if he didn't, he would probably be in a good spot to return next year and get another chance. But the fact that this is what's happened throughout the year, when you get called out on it, right? When people, put that 2 + 2 = 4 out there, you get mad at them for stating what's obvious and what you have already said publicly. It makes me just tired of the antics. It makes me tired of this whole situation. And in the same way that a lot of people wanted Odell gone because they were tired of talking about the Odell stuff, this is why there's a lot of people who, might have been open to Baker getting another year here that just are done with him because they're tired of this stuff. And with Baker, this is the second time that he has kind of gone back and done this kind of thing. And yeah, in 2018, when he was playing well, this was cute. But, now when you're coming off a bad season, this is not fun anymore. This is not productive. This is not anything that anybody wants to do with you anymore. And let's not forget, the one thing that Baker's not addressing is like, why in the world after the Monday Night Football game did he in his press conference decide to say, after the game, I'm going to talk to my wife and my agent about whether I'm going to play next week. Not, I'm going to talk to the team doctors. I'm going to talk with the team. I'm going to talk with the coaching staff. I'm going to consult everybody in this situation and see if my health is something that should be out there for week 18. I wouldn't have had a problem with that. But he said he's talking to his agent and his wife, which means he is thinking about protecting himself. I mean, if Odell did this same thing, there would be a lot of people who are defending Baker Mayfield right now that would be murdering Odell, and rightfully so, right? Because we murdered Odell when he wanted out and when he had, when he did not have his dad delete that Instagram post about how bad of a quarterback Baker. We went at him full-throated. And Baker right now, I think he's doing something on the same level, if not worse, because it's just making things more problematic than it has to be. And now a situation where, hey, we might have brought in some competition, but you still probably going to start next year, goes to a situation where I don't know if you can bring him back. And that's really his own doing, right, at this point, to be honest with you. I understand some people don't want to hear that or want Baker to be here next year or trying to look at this logically without looking at some of the emotional elements in this, but you have to look at some of the human elements of this situation. And the human elements tell me that this is not something that can continue on and you would still have a healthy locker room environment. Like, I'm just not getting that vibe from this entire thing. That's just my thoughts on that whole thing. The next question comes from Pee Wee, who says, I know everybody's talking about Baker. How do you feel about Joe Woods? The defense looked like a top 10 unit for 8 weeks. Do you think he has earned another season? Why would Joe Woods not have earned another season is my question. Like, of course he's earned. He had one of the best defenses in football. Yeah, he's what? Okay, yeah, he's going to earn another season. But thank you for the question, man. Next question comes from C. Zachary Chad, who says, are we as Browns fans a part of the problem with the franchise? Why would any player want to come here seeing how we treat our players and coaches during adversity? Name me one team, one fan base that would have gone through this kind of year with their team and not reacted in a negative manner. Name me the team. Philly fans boo. Jacksonville fans are about to show up to their last game of the season in clown makeup to emphasize to ownership that this team is a circus and a clown show. This is not unique to Cleveland. Being disappointed and voicing your disappointment in vocal ways with a football team, whether you think it's appropriate behavior or not, doesn't make it unique to Cleveland, right? Like, if you have a disappointing year, you're going to get booed. That is the NFL. The Browns fan base is not the only team booing their squad. There are a lot of teams who booed it. There are Oklahoma booed their quarterback, and that's a college kid. Their student section was like, this is not unique to the Cleveland Browns. I don't know why people act like whenever the Browns have, a negative reaction to something that like, oh, this is like a unique thing with Browns fans and we're uniquely terrible. No, like that's just not the case. Look, if you have Super Bowl aspirations and then you end the season potentially with double-digit losses, you're going to get booed. That's the NFL. You're going to get, I don't care where you play. Name me one place you could play where that's going to be acceptable. Nah, man, it's not Browns fans' fault that this team went 7-10. Now, are there some times where I feel like Browns fans kind of like fall into a trap where it's like the second something goes wrong, we go straight to the most negative thing possible? Absolutely. But as I have done this job and interacted with people who do this job for other teams, I'm starting to learn that kind of behavior is just common for almost every team in the NFL, even the good ones. So, it's just that. So, man, the team's problems over the last 20 years have had to do with their own internal dysfunction. Their problems this year don't have to do with the fan base. Like, it might be a quarter of a percentage of a decimal of a problem, but it ain't nothing that you can blame this whole situation on. I think that's a little ridiculous. The next question comes from Jared Kent, who says, do we need a different offensive coordinator who's not in lockstep with Stefanski? A little different offensive philosophy could cause chaos, but might help diversify things a little. Jared, I want you to read that last sentence back to yourself, man. A little offensive philosophy could cause chaos. So we're risking chaos. What's the reward? It might diversify things a little. That risk is not worth that reward, in my opinion. Right? Like, we've been through the whole offensive coordinator not being in line. That's a terrible place to be. I would rather be where the Browns are right now, even though I have said I'm not a big fan of Alex Van Pelt, but I'd rather be here with them in this spot than, if Kevin Stefanski had Todd Monken as his offensive coordinator. I think that would be a recipe for disaster. No, you need to be able to have some level of agreement on the offensive philosophy within the building if you want things to be coherent. That's just the truth, right? You can't have dudes trying to run different offenses and think that's going to be anything but a train show. And we've learned that through multiple regimes. I mean, we did that with Hugh Jackson how many times? We did that with Freddie Kitchens how many times? We did that with how many guys throughout the... All right, that's going to be it for this week's Q&A. Again, guys, thank you guys for asking these questions. I'm sorry if I come off a little bit more agitated this week than normal. It's been a long week with the Cleveland Browns here, and it's been a long season. A lot of frustrations coming out here, so hopefully we can watch this last game of the year. Make sure you check out the watch party, end this season, and start talking about the future and start moving on to less frustrating conversations than the conversation we've been stuck on all week. But that's it for this week's show. Again, guys, thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.